Hi, my name's Roberta Romeo. Welcome to my studio. So are you ready to explore the watercolor magic? I do think watercolor is magical. I love the way the colors mingle together. I love the transparency, the translucency. I just love the brilliance of the colors. So today for this exercise, we're going to learn a variety of ways to soften the edges to create a looseness in your painting. And we're going to do this by painting this Florida sand dollar. Some of the ways we're going to soften the edges is by releasing the water in the belly of our brushes. The other way is we're going to use a spray bottle to soften edges. We're going to use one of the tools I use a lot in my studio is a Kleenex to soften the edges. And then lastly, we're going to learn how to soften the edges using our brush and pushing the color around. And as a bonus, we're going to learn to splatter paint. So let's go ahead and look at a sand dollar, a Florida sand dollar. You'll see that it's not a round circle. It has the illusion of being a round shape, but look at all the indentations and the undulations around the edge of the sand dollar. In the center of the sand dollar, you'll see what looks like a 5-petaled flower impressed in the top of the sand dollar. And at the end of 4 of those petals is a hole, and then there's another longer hole in the center here. And this is our Florida sand dollar, and it's just a lot of fun to paint. Before you do any painting, I always encourage my students to pick out a color scheme with your color wheel. In this particular painting, we're going to be using the rectangular tetrad. The red orange, we're going to be using Daniel Smith Quinacridone Sienna. All of the colors that I'm using today are Daniel Smith's. The yellow orange, we'll be using the Quinacridone Gold. For the blue green, we'll be using Phthalo Turquoise, and then for the blue violet, we'll be using Enden Throne. And those are the colors we're going to be using today. Okay, let's talk about brushes for just a minute. I'm going to be using one of my favorite brushes is made by the manufacturer Silver, and the line is Black Velvet. They're Black Squirrel and Synthetic. It's a very reasonably priced brush, and this is mostly all of the brushes I use is the Silver Black Velvet. I get them from Cheap Joe's catalog. I'll be using the 8 round, I'll be using a 2 round, and then I'll be using a rigger brush. I'll also be using a Simply Simmons. This is a very inexpensive brush. It's all synthetic, but that's the brush I'll use to pull around, to push out my color. Alrighty, so I think we're ready to get started. First thing we're going to do is our first layer. It's our oil artisan silver. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start with my lightest color. I'm going to just a few sprinkles of water there. I'm going to take my Quinacridone pick up some of that color. And I'm going to pull that around. And I do want it to kind of... All right, and let's go ahead and put a little bit more in here. Let's say we just made this too dark, which we just did. But I want to show you how you can change that value. So with my Kleenex, I'm just going to go in and blot it out. And see how now it's automatically made. I kept my darks, but it has some whites and some other medium values in here as well. And I just want to... I took a little too much out, so I'm just going to go ahead and paint some back in here. All right, and I'll just take a little bit of my water, soften some of those edges, and I'm just releasing that water down in the belly of the brush there. All right, next I'm going to come over here with my quinacridone sienna, and I'm going to paint this around because I want this to be show up that little petal a little bit, and then I'm going to bring my edge around. I've got a dark pigment here. I want this, this color really looks best, I think, when it's a little on the dark side. If you put too much water in it, watch what happens. It just kind of, I don't know, it just dulls it down to me. So I don't like to, I want it to stay a little brighter, but I might have a little too much thickness there. So let's go in and let's kind of eliminate some of that with my tissue. And another way you can, if you have too much color of paint, is just flood that area with some water, then come back in, and it'll pretty much take a lot of that color off. All right, but I do still need some of that color here, so I am going to go back and paint some in here. And as a matter of fact, I think this is a good time to show you the spray bottle. So I'm darkening it up again. And then watch what happens when I use my spray bottle in here. It makes these wonderful little rivulets of color. And the paint, well, and now I'm going to move my paper around a little bit. Wherever there's water, the paint will run into. And I want you to see these wonderful little, may have to force some of those in there. There, now you can see them. Those rivulets of color. I really like that, so I'm going to soften some of this up here. Always make sure you have your Kleenex is clean wherever you're touching it, or else you'll end up transferring that color. Now, I have a puddle of water and paint here. So I'm going to show you a technique called the thirsty brush. So you clean your brush really good in the clean water. You blot that brush really good. Get most of the water out. And then you just put the tip of it into this puddle of water and see how it just soaked that up. Now you want to continue to clean that brush and dry it up, or else what will happen is you'll just transfer that to another area. Okay, let's go over here to our indent throne. And I'm going to paint that up in here. I want to get a little shape going on. And then I'm really going to get this nice shape down in here. I like to use a dark color on the bottom of my sand dollar. And I like to have a nice big base. I always feel like that grounds it. Now I'm going to use my spray bottle, and this time just kind of spray some of this down here. I should have, just to get a nice little texture. And then I want to go ahead and soften this up here though. So I'm going to take the side of my brush and I'm releasing that water. See, pushing down on the belly and releasing that water to soften that edge. And sometimes you may need to go with the tip of your brush and just scrumble it in a little bit. I am going to add more water here just to... And I'm getting kind of a pinwheel effect here, which is not at all what I intended. So I'm going to add a little turquoise to that because I want my colors to kind of blend in together. I don't want a pinwheel. Painting sand dollars today. We'll do pinwheels another day. And then I think I'm going to go ahead and pull some of my Quin Gold over here. And I also need to remember, in here I need just a little bit of a, to show off my petals. I need a little color. So basically what I'm doing is just taking a light color on my brush and just very lightly. I don't need a lot of color there, but I do want you to get the idea of that petal in there. I might just go ahead and do that with the water. All right, then over here, I think I'm going to go ahead and, I really like that turquoise today. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little more turquoise over here. And then just flood it out with some water. Do some softening of my edge. But I want to carry it up to this edge of this petal a little bit. Okay. This is pretty much where we would stop. I see a few places. The idea is just to get our undercolors in. But while it's still wet, I can add a little more color to some of the edges here. And I think I'll just do that right there, because I really want that color to, oh, and it can be getting a nice little effect over here. Go ahead and that's a little serendipity. I'm really liking that. Okay, I am going to step away now and dry this, and I will be back in just a few minutes. Okay, we have that dried. If you want to test to see if your painting has dried, always use the back of your hand and put it down. If it feels cool, then you'll know your painting is still wet. And you want to make sure that you get it dry, or when you put the paint, the next coat on, it will just bleed. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to start up here on the side over here so I can try not to cross too much. And I'm going to use, matter of fact, I'm going to turn it around. And I'm going to go, I think, with my Quin Gold. I need a nice deep part of it here. So I'm going to come over here, and it's a very, I have a lot of pigment, but it still is very wet. Now the nice thing about watercolor is it will go a very long way. Rinsing my brush, getting it nice and clean. Then I'm coming up here with some water, and then I will come and connect some of those. And so what I'm doing is I have painted, the first coat was the image of the sand dollar, and now I don't have to paint always on the inside. Sometimes I can paint on the outside to really pop that edge. And that's what I'm doing now. So I'm going to come in with a little more of the quinacridone gold, and just with the tip of my brush, I'm making that a little bit darker because I really want to pop that edge. All right, so matter of fact, I think I want to add just a touch more water. All right. Ooh. I had paint on that brush, so I can just blot that away, but no worries because when we splatter, everything's going to work out. All right, so I have my exterior edge. Now I think I'm going to come in with my brush and make a little bit more distinct edge right here. So now I'm on the inside of the sand dollar. Here I'm on the outside, now I'm on the inside. And I want to be careful not to get near that because this it will make mud. So I'm just going to add a little more pigment there. Let me get to my, just want a little darker right in here. And then I'll do a little water. And it's just going to mingle with that other turquoise I have there. And then while I'm doing the turquoise, I think this time I'm going to go on the outside. Sure. I'm going to go on the outside and I'm going to catch it right over here. And see how that's starting to really make that pop out. Come in with a nice clean water. And I think I'm going to use my spray bottle this time. But I don't want it to get near that other. I don't want it to run in. So I'm going to protect that. And just spray it with that paper in front so that it doesn't. And then I have that nice little edge coming out there. And I think I'm going to come in with my Indenthrone. And we already have it blue on the outside, but I think I'm going to just make it a little more distinct on the inside, just a little bit right there. Rinse my brush, and I have a lot. I'm going to use my thirsty brush, drying my brush off, and just putting the point in there and just soaking up that water that's right there. Because I don't want that water to get in that color, to get in with this orange, because that can make mud. The other way you can do that is with the tip of your Kleenex, just in there, and that, see, that just soaks it up. Also, I see where this is going to bleed into that, so just with my Kleenex, I'm just going to touch it up there and dry that area. All right, now then, I'm going to have a hard edge here if I don't get busy. So I want some blue to come in here. I want to soften that edge a little bit. Well, I have that blue. I'm going to go ahead and get this little dark area, this hole in the sand dollar. I'll go ahead and get that. I don't want that to be too distinctive, and I don't want you to look and say, oh, look, there's the hole in the sand dollar. I just want it to be part of it. That was a little too dark, so I'll just lighten that. Get a little bit more. Alrighty. I think I want to soften this a little bit. I don't mind if the color blends a little bit, but I just don't want it to make a big, messy area there. All right, that's a pretty solid sand dollar we have there. I'm going to come in with just a tiny bit of water and just barely touching the Quin Sienna. See, it's so light there. But I do want to come in and give an indication a little more of that petal. So I'm just going to let you know there's a little shape here. I'm not going to make them all the same. This one has a lot. Let's see what happens here. Maybe too wet. Oh, it's just enough that I think I can. Whoop, no, I can't get by with it. And then hopefully just a little bit of a shape there. And I think I want a little more up here. Now, one of the issues I have is I'll say, oh, I like that. What if I do it over here? Oh, I like that. What if I do it over there? That's just too much repetition. So try to stay away from that game, because then you end up with everything looks the same. All right, now what I see is I'm going to have to, this is called a Fritz Scrubber. This is a cheap Joe's brush, and one of the ways to improve your artwork is to go ahead and make those mistakes, but learn how to correct them. So right here I have a lot going on. So I'm just put a little clean water in here, a little more clean water, and I'm just wetting this area, and then I'm just going to count to 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, and then I'm going to use the brush and lightly scrub it out, and that's just going to kind of soften that area and just blend it in a little bit more. I had too much of a line I wasn't happy with. Okay, I'm kind of feeling this now. So let's do a magical splatter. I love to do splatters. I always suggest you use a rigger brush, because it makes a much nicer splatter, I think. Make sure you have lots of nice water with your pigment and roll that brush around. I don't want too much on the inside, so I'm gonna, okay, not enough water in there. So let me add a little more water. All right. And what I like is how it makes those kind of lines there. I think that's really cool. Now, I am going to show you what happens if you use an 8. Let me go with a smaller brush, because so if you use just a round brush, I find that it just makes a blob. Oh, how nice. It didn't make a blob that time. Well, maybe I'll try that one again. But I always find that they were bigger spots, and I didn't like those. So that's why I always use my rigger, because I can get nicer splatters. So a little more water in with my quinacridone sienna. A little spraying here. Another thing is always make sure that you're turning your brush in different directions, or else it will look very manufactured, because it will all be in the same direction, and that's not something you want to do. Then I'll come in with my Quin Gold. Oops, not enough water. There we go. A little here. Now, this is the other problem I end up having. I have so much fun, it's hard to find a place to stop. See, I didn't do this one. I have to do a few more. Ooh, see, I got a big blob there. All right, I'm calling that done. With my little number 2, I should have done this before that. I am going to make sure I just have that. I'll actually take this big blob, and I need that just a little bit darker. At the end there. now that's all you see. So let's go back and blot those just a little bit. Soften them up. And I also am going to blot this out. Okay, now I could, and be very happy doing it, go back and do some more splatters. I want just a little bit. I'm not going to do it all the way around because that would just be too much. But just a little bit of a idea of those petals. Just kind of gives you a little bit more definition there. Okay, I would call that done. I could do more splatters, but then what I would end up with is more splatters. And more splatters is not better. It's just more. So I'm going to quit here. When this is dry, I probably will come back and do a few more fine details because I like to do these. Normally I do it on, excuse me. Normally I do it on this smaller size. This is half of a standard size letter sheet of paper. And then I can tuck them in a card in an envelope and send them off to somebody. And they just have a little, I'll write a little happy note on it. Okay, so we have learned today that we can soften our edges by pushing the color away, using a Kleenex, using a spray bottle, or using the water from the belly of the brush. So I hope that you will try this exercise and try it on a variety of color schemes. Here's another color scheme I tried. I really like opera, so I wanted to do something with opera. And when you get tired of doing sand dollars, do a dragonfly or a starfish or anything that inspires you. I hope you enjoyed this exercise, and I hope to see you again. Goodbye.